This is the UI layer. This is the data layer. The UI layer includes the elements, for example, our main activity, and viewModel. viewModel is the state-holding object. Components that expose data and processing logic to the UI. If the logic between the UI layer and the data layer is more complex, generally, a domain layer is also required. It can be understood as the middle layer. In actual development, there is usually a UI layer, domain layer, data layer. Today's course mainly explains the UI layer. viewModel converts the data in the data layer and displays it to the UI. When the user adds information, the viewModel will pass it back to the information layer. After the data layer has processed the request, the UI layer will use new information to display to the user. There is no operation to write to the data layer in this course. Document link below. The official course link is below. Course content: Introduction to Android Architecture using viewModel. The completed code is linked below. Build configuration language using Kotlin DSL. Search viewModel. Open lifecycle. Choose Kotlin. Select Compose. The version is 2.6.2. Replace with the new library directory declaration. Dependencies are automatically added. The version number is 2.6.2. The red color will disappear after synchronization. Open GitHub link below. Ctrl plus select all and copy. Ctrl plus V paste. All words. The set class is a collection type. The allWords variable is initialized to a collection of strings containing strings. The maximum number of words to guess. Players can only guess 10 words. Score added when guessing the word correctly. Now you need to create a new viewModel file. First, inherit the viewModel class. viewModel contains application data and methods for handling the data. viewModel still exists after configuration changes. Ensure information is always available when needed. Use viewModel to wrap UI state. viewModel acts as a state container. Select the save location. Just leave it as default. We change it to a data class. Data class is a special class used to store data. Change to parentheses. Current scrambled. Current word count. Score. Is guessed word wrong. Is game over. Okay? The data class for the game UI status is written. The next step needs to be in viewModel. Assign an instance of the gameUState class to a variable. Assign an instance of the gameUState class to a variable _WState. _WState to store the current state of the game. Use ewTableSteful to save mutable state flows. Because the data of gameUState data class is variable, ewTableSteful is part of the Kotlin Flow library. Use ewTableSteful to represent the state of the view and update it based on user input or other events. Use the ewTableSteful object to save the current message. Use private to avoid status updates from other categories. This line of code uses viewModel to wrap UI state. Created a state flow to store the current state of the game. Apply the stateflow operator. Convert ewTableSteful to stateflow. Make its data stream read-only, because the UI only needs to read status updates, and it is safer to use in multiple threads. The WState property is a stateflow. It exposes the current state of the game to its collector. Stateflow is a stateholder observable flow in Kotlin. It emits current state and new state updates to its collector. This line of code is used to store the current state of the game. Use the ewTableStateOff function to create a mutable state. Import get and set value. var has getter and setter. Set the setter method of the userGuess attribute to private. This means that the value of userGuess can only be modified in this class. Update the value here by executing the updateUserGuess function of this class. ewElements execute this function through events. That is, an event occurs when the keyboard or button is clicked after entering the word. Execute this function. Store the entered word in guessed word. Update the value of userGuess. If you don't understand this word well, change to keyboard input. The input field initially appears blank. Update the value here when the user enters a word. Create a variable called usedWords and initialize it as a mutable collection of strings. The usedWords collection is used to store words used in the game. The used words variable is initialized to an empty string collection. This means that at the beginning of the game, there are no words in the used words collection. Select random words and play them randomly if the word is not in the used words collection. Then add the word to the set. This will prevent players from guessing the same word repeatedly during the game. Current word. Random returns a random element in the collection. Lazy initialization of this variable. If the word used contains the current word, then continue to randomly select a new word until you find a word that has not been used before. Other cases, the word used is added as the current word. Shuffle current word. The temporary character array is equal to the current word and gets each letter. Touch array returns the characters of the string. Shuffles the elements in the array. Check whether the scrambled string is the same as the input string. Convert the temporary character array to a string. Check if the user's guess is correct. There is a prompt to change it to private. Here is a demonstration of the role of private. So I agree with everything. If ignore case is true, compare char on each character. The updated score is equal to the score in the updated state. That is, it becomes 20 points here. Copy means backup. Do not change the original data of ewState. Instead, make modifications on the backed up data so as not to affect the original data. If is generally easier to read by adding braces. Jump to next word. Update the score to its previous state. Update user's guess to be empty. The init block is automatically executed when the class is created. Remove all elements from this collection. The entire layout is vertical. The first line is text. The gray part is the card. There are 3 texts inside and a keyboard input field. This is also a card without altitude. First, associate with viewModel. Use collectedState function to collect ewState flow of viewModel. This is written without using by. Using delegates can save you writing fly. The collectedState function converts the state stream into a state object. This object contains the current value of the state stream and is stateflow for subscribing to stateflow updates. ewState is a state object. It contains the current value of viewModel's ewState state stream. ewState can be used to display the current state of the game in the Pretend the text is saved and changed. Word count. Wait a moment before adding the placeholder. Scroll vertically when the content height is larger than the maximum constraint allows. Create and remember scroll state based on the current appropriate scrolling configuration. To allow changing the scroll position or observing scrolling behavior, if you are not familiar with vertical arrangement in English, it can be copied here. Enter arrangement. In the case of using column, vertical arrangement. The first step, vertical. Step 2, arrangement. At this time, you can choose center or top. The method is to center it horizontally. Use %d to represent the placeholder for an integer. If you are familiar with C language, it will be easy to understand here. %s is a string. This score needs to be pulled from viewModel. Add game screen composable items to the main activity. If this parameter is provided in the game screen composable, then you need to provide values for the parameters here. Therefore, we wrap them in composable items. Add scrambled word text. The number of word guesses is equal to the value of the current game state. The same is true for the currently scrambled words. Format the text to the right. Add prompt text. Display medium. Add keyboard input field. Text inputs. This is the effect of text field. This is the effect of outline text styled. Value is to set the initial value of the text input box. On value change is when the user enters a value, will change the initial value of the input field. It is the value of on value change. It overwrites the text of text. Apps generally have more than one text input field, so I put it in a separate file. Alt plus Shift plus up. The input field should be blank initially. Let it use the value here. If the direct assignment is empty, it cannot be entered because there is no variable value here. The initial value of this input box is saved to viewModel. Write this line in viewModel. Single line text field will become single horizontal scroll. Select Compose. onValueChange sets the callback function when the text input box value changes. That is, when the user enters a value, the value of the input field will be changed. Pass the value to the updateUserGuess method of viewModel to save user input. For example, if the user enters certain words, we want to update the default value. GuessEdWord pauses the entered value. Then overwrite the blank value of GuessEnter. Then the input field will always display the entered word. The onValueChange type requires a function label. This is the text shown here. If the guess is wrong, if errors are displayed in the wrong color, done is to complete the input method event action. This composable calls the keyboard input composable. The parameters it requires are provided above. Paste. These parameters are required for keyboard input. Since the last parameter is a lambda and has no default value, so it can be written inside curly brackets. Free choice written. The attribute I want cannot be found. Delete private. Therefore, the prompt can be changed to private because it is not used by external classes yet. the initial error is false. If the guess is wrong, change the guess error to true. Now write the layout of two buttons. The score will continue to increase. If the game is over, final score dialog. Select Close Dialog Box button. Close the dialog box when the user clicks outside the dialog box or the back button. In this example, you want to disable this function. That is, clicking outside the dialog box cannot close the dialog box. You can only choose whether to exit or restart the game through the button. If you want to disable this feature, leave the curly brackets empty. The local context. Current object is converted into an activity object. If the cast is unsafe, this operator will throw an exception. The exception will be class cast exception. Congratulations! Increase white space. You can also wrap to buttons. Press C to arrange vertically. Press R to arrange horizontally. Then use padding to modify them together. I will set padding separately here. The shadow is the poster height. After submission, there are still words in the input field. Open the viewModel file. Only the scores are updated here. Displays blank after submission. And means line break. My writing style is a little different from Code Lab.